Mm. So, good afternoon to all of you from Gudrun Island here in Argentina, Buenos Aires. We are starting a new week with our study of Raga-vartma-candrika, already entering into the final sections of our series. I think we will be having 2 more lectures this week and 1 more lecture next week in order to quote-unquote finish our discussion. So today's meeting number 27, and we are studying the second part of the 7th verse or prose of this second section of the book, second illumination of this Chandrika, this moonbeam, moon ray that sheds light on the path of Raga. So this 7th prose or verse is the penultimate verse section of the book. So today will be the second part of the study of this verse, and on Thursday we will be continuing and finishing the study of this particular verse, and next Monday we will be having our last class. We will be studying the 8th prose or verse, which is the very last one of the whole Raga-vartma-candrika. So let's begin as usual by presenting some brief recap of what we were discussing last week, like last Thursday, when we started with the study of this 7th verse of the second section, which mainly dealt this first part with the concept of attaining perfection in the context, of course, of Raga-nuga sadhana bhakti. So Vishwanath, again, he's reaching the end of his narrative, so he's also pointing to the ultimate reach, if you will, of Raga Bhakti and how to attain that specifically, which are the prerequisites for eventually entering into the Golok, into this planet that he described very in much detail in this second section, speaking about the psychology of Krishna, of the Brajavasis, the loving interactions between them, and the components that allow such an environment. So first, Vishwanath started this 7th verse with mentioning that now it will be described how a Raga-nuga Bhakta gradually advances through the stages of Anartha Nibriti, Nishta, Ruchi, Anasakti, up to the stage of Prem and the direct attainment of their beloved deity. So in this penultimate verse, Vishwanath starts again to close his book. He will be speaking, as we will know, about the ultimate requisite for the Raga Bhakta who is about to live this world forever, who has nothing else to do here, if you will. Further culture of his inner world will be required somewhere else, as we will see. So here he mentions that he will describe how the Raga-nuga Bhakta go through all these stages, classical of bhakti, but actually he's not describing this in detail. He's just mentioning Anartha Nibriti, Nishta, Rucha, Sakti, and Prem, not entering into the detail that he did in his Madhurya Kadambini, for example. But mainly he will focus actually on a description of what to do when one reaches Prema in this lifetime. That will be the main focus. He's just mentioning all these other stages as a way of saying you have to go through all of them in order to reach Prem. And even when you reach Prem, there is some further extra work to do. And that will be happening not necessarily in this body, in this lifetime, but as we will see in your next body, in your next birth, in Prakat Lila in Golok, in Gokul, in Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan. So he quotes, for giving support to his upcoming idea, Ujjwal Nilamani, 2 verses from there, 49 and 50 from the 3rd section, chapter. And there it is said, he says, those who are especially attracted to the ecstasy of the Brajavasis and thus perform Raga-nuga bhajan, they will attain the abundance of eagerness that is fit for performing Raga-nuga bhajan and will take birth in Braj in groups of 1, 2, or 3 in their own time, according to their eagerness. So here, Vishwanath elaborates on this verse, saying that the word anuragogha in this verse means that eagerness which makes one qualify for doing Raga-nuga bhajan. And he mentions that the anurag mentioned here does not refer to the intense attachment, the anurag that is a development of the sthayi bhav of one's prem, if we will, because there is no likelihood of this manifesting in the body of the sadhaka. So he starts to unfold his main point here. So he says then, the phrase having taken birth in Braj in this verse means that the sadhana siddhas take birth from the womb of a gopika, just as Krishna's Nitya Siddha gopis appear with him when he descends to earth during his Prakat Lila. So here starts to officially present his main point in this verse. Thereafter, he finishes this section saying, by associating with, seeing, hearing, and glorifying the Mahabhav field, eternally liberated Braj gopis, the gopis who had attained perfection through performing sadhana gradually developed Sneha, Man, Pranaya, Raga, Anurag, and Mahabhav. These feelings could not possibly have arisen in the sadhaka's previous material body. So this is the main point of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this 7th verse, actually. So here he's presenting again a further unfolding regarding the ultimate reach of our sadhaka deha. And of course, he's doing this presentation in the context of Kamanuga Bhakti, which is the main context for his whole presentation in the Raga-vartma-candrika, although we are trying to make the presentation a little bit broader in terms of other possibilities, and Bandhanuga Bhakti and so on. So his main point here is that, no, Prem, for someone who has reached Prem in this lifetime, beginning stages of Prem, that Prem is to be churned, if you will, in the Prakat Lila, in the manifest pastimes on some planet Earth where Krishna is executing his Lila in some Vrindavan, in some planet Earth. Because the point is, Prem is one thing, and the successive stages of development of Prem and other things, Sneha, Man, Pranay, Raga, Anurag, Bhava, Mahabhav, at least in the context of Kamanuga Bhakti, all these stages have to be there in place. And the point here being is, one of the points is, that's too intense of a development for our present condition, our present body. So one needs to obtain particular samskars, rasa samskars, even from the womb, being born in that Vrindavan and obtaining the association of Nitya Siddha gopis, eternal associates of Krishna. Again, in the context of Kamanuga Bhakti, I'm saying this. So by the association of these Nitya Parishats, naturally one will attain the further development of Prem. And only then it will be possible to have the direct service association of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. So this is an idea that actually originates in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. That, at least to my knowledge, there is no other previous acharya than him that mentioned this in such a clear way. But at the same time, it's a very pretty logical like extension or derivation of these verses of Pujbal Nilamani that he has quoted here. And also it's an idea that is accepted by all Gaudiyas, at least in my knowledge. All of them agree with this conception of being born in the Prakat Lila and so on. So to further develop the point, we quoted some examples. For example, the example of the gopis who Krishna called all of them for Rasa Lila, but some of them were trapped at home. And there were some of the Dandakaranya sages who didn't have this Sangha till that point. Even though they were born as gopis after meeting Ram in Treta Yuga, they were born in this Prakat Lila. They didn't have yet the Sangha of Nitya Siddha gopis, as some others did have and were able to join. But eventually they joined, of course. And we spoke about how these so-called obstacles that sometimes we feel it's not allowing us for further union, is there only for us to intensify our purvarag in this case. In the case of romantic love, the type of separation that, and in anticipation before meeting officially the object of our affection. And also, we quoted some verses from the Bhagavad as well that spoke about the intensity of the separation, the glories of the Nitya Siddha gopis in separation in the Prakat Lila that show the remaining stages of Prem, which is what the Raganuga Sadhaka will require. So in these verses, one was from the Gopi Gita, and the other was a famous verse regarding Krishna. After Krishna annihilated the forest fire in parallel with the forest fire of separation of the gopis. So in this verse, the gopis are exhibiting another levels of separation, not Purvarag, but the other ones, Mam, Prabhas, and so on. So those are the remaining ones for the Raganuga Sadhaka in Kamanuga Bhakti. Actually, interestingly, in the Bhagavatam, there are 6 main songs in the 10th canto, sung by the gopis. There are different Gitas in the Bhagavatam, not only the Gopi Gita. We have also another Gitas not sung by the gopis as well. We have the Mahishi Gita, the Rudra Gita, the Aila Gita. But in the 10th canto, there are 6 main songs, Gitas, presented by the gopis, which are the Venu Gita, the Pranay Gita, the Gopi Gita, the Jugal Gita, the Viraha Gita, and the Gamara Gita. And if you understand all of them are presented in different stages of separation. So they are very useful for the sadhakas who had to go through that in order to attain their desired goal. Venu Gita is Purvarag, gopis hearing the Krishna's flute before officially meeting with him for the first time, Venu Gita. Then Pranaya Gita was other type of separation. Krishna is calling the gopis for Rasa Lila. They see him, they met him, but when they come there, he's sending them back home, apparently. So they are anticipating some possible separation, another type of separation, but being in front of him, Pranaya Gita. Then Gopi Gita, which comes after the gopis join Krishna, at least for a while, for the first period of the Rasa Lila. They are dancing, they are singing, they are exchanging, loving interaction of some level, and Krishna suddenly disappears. And they are thrown in an ocean of distress, and they sing this Gopi Gita. Then the 4th one is the Jugal Gita, which has to do with after the Gopi Gita and after gopis are joining Krishna every single night for Rasa Lila from now on. Now they are developing the desire to join in Krishna during the day, at midday. As we know in the eternality of Vrindavan, gopis are joining Krishna every midday at Radha Kund. But at this point of the unfolding of the earthly Lila, this is not happening. So in the Jugal Gita, the gopis want this. No? So they express separation during the day by meditating in Krishna's during the day. So it's another form of separation. All of this, of course, there are stages that get intensified one after the other. And of course, after the Jugal Gita, Krishna will kill Aristasura and Radhakunda will be manifested, and they will get the chance of meeting them every midday. After that, we have Viraha Gita, which is when Akrura goes to Vrindavan and starts to take Krishna and Balaram to Mathura, fighting with Kamsa. And the gopis are seeing Krishna leaving Vrindavan, and they are exhibiting another form of separation there. And finally, Brahmara Gita, which is when Krishna is officially outside of Vrindavan. He said, I come back in some days. He didn't. He's in Mathura. And Srimati Radharani in the top peak madness of Mahabhav, Divya Mad, Madanaki Mahabhav starts to speak to a bumblebee, as you know. Uddhava is there and so on. So another form of separation. So the point is these 6 Gitas are very important, and all of them are illustrating different forms and degrees of separations, all of which, again, a Raga Sadhaka who aspires in this case for Kamanuga Bhakti has to go through, and this will happen in the association of Nitya Siddha Gopis. So, so let's continue now. And also we mentioned at the end of our previous lecture, and I already starting, in connection to the sadhaka, no, to access this, the devotee, one may ask, we presented that question at the end, that actually that's a question that starts today in the next section of this 7th verse, but one may question, if a devotee can go directly to Aprakat Golok Vrindavan from here, the question will be from where he has received all the stages of Sneha up to Mahabhav. So today we will continue developing this idea. But again, we will finish this verse next class. So next class we will even further develop this idea, which is the main topic of this 7th verse. So let's go to the next section of the 7th verse, which will have mainly to do with the idea of entering the pastimes of the Lord. So I will share with you in the chat the section. The first part we will be sharing today. 1 second, because it's too long. I will share it in 2 parts. So that's the first one. And okay. So I will read it for you. Okay. It says like this. Here one may ask, can it be said that upon leaving his present body, a sadhaka who has attained prem directly receives the form of a gopi in the unmanifest Braj without taking birth from the womb of a gopi, and then, through the association of the eternally perfect gopis, she attains the different moods of sneha and so on? The answer here is no. That will not happen, because without taking birth from the womb of a gopi, one cannot get a proper acquaintance with the human-like pastimes there. Without taking birth from the womb of a gopi, one cannot answer questions like, whose daughter is this Saki, and whose daughter-in-law and whose wife is she? Then a further question arises. What is the harm if one says that they directly take birth in the Braj, located in the spiritual world? Then the answer is no, that is also not possible. Sadhakas and mundane people cannot enter Aprakat Vrindavan, which is inaccessible to the material world. Only the perfected ones can enter there, for that realm is known as pure Siddha Bhumi, the world of the perfected ones. So, as I mentioned in the remaining of this 7th verse in today's class and next class as well, Vishwanath will continue to unfold his main point here, which is, as we mentioned, being born in the Prakat Lila as a necessity for entering the Aprakat Lila, to further cultivate their one's prem in the company of the Nitya Siddha Parikars. And also, as we already said, because it is not possible for this present body to contain all the ecstatic transformations of prem, of the developments of prem. Even if Krishna were to mercifully bestow this on us, the body will die. It will be too much for the present body. So as usual, Vishwanath will continue to develop this idea by addressing some possible arguments in connection to it. Some Purva Paksha, imaginary Purva Paksha, with the idea of making it the most comprehensive presentation as possible. So here presents the following Purva Paksha or argument. And someone may say that, well, after reaching Prem, the beginning of Prem, someone reaches Prem in his lifetime, so as a sadhaka may be fully identified with that identity, which implies a whole identity as in a particular role of service in Vrindavan. That person is aware of that identity at every moment. So in that case, if that is so, the argument will be, why is there any further need for such a devotee to take birth from the womb of a gopi in the Prakat Lila after already having attained Prem and being so much engrossed, imbibed in such an identity? Why he cannot go just straight to Aprakat and further cultivate whatever needs to be cultivated in the Aprakat? So in this way, the Purva Pakshin, the person who presents the argument, may conclude that actually such premikas, such devotees who have attained Prem, should receive a Gopi Deha. In this case, remember, we are speaking in the context of Kamanuga Bhakti today. They should receive a body of the Gopi in the Aprakat Vrindavan, and they should attain the personal service of Radha and Krishna after gradually going up the stages, further stages of Prem like Sneha, Mam Pranay, Raganurag, up to Mahabhav, on the strength of associating with the Nitya Siddha. So that's the possible argument that Vishwanath is considering. Someone may say that you attain Prem here, you become fully engrossed in your Prem-like identity, and you can go straight to the Aprakat Lila, and there you will culture the remaining stages of Prem. So to this argument, Vishwanath gives a reasoning of why this is not actually possible. He says that without taking birth from the womb of a gopi in the Prakat Lila, it is impossible to nourish let's say the crucial elements of the Nara Lila, of the human-like pastimes, which has to do with the attainment of Vrindavan. So what's the implication of this expression? What's the implication of saying it's impossible to nourish the human-like pastimes? Well, he replies by saying, without knowing the specifics, basically, of your own identity in the Nara Lila, again, as he mentioned, whose daughter one is, whose daughter-in-law, whose wife, again, in the context of Kamanuga Bhakti, in case one will were to be born as a gopi there, if you don't know those specifics, you will never have a human-like acquaintance of the customs of each other there. I don't know if you get the point. My point will be the following. In the apricot lila, there is no birth. There's nobody being born there. It's the apricot. As you know, Krishna is not born in the apricot lila. He's only born in the prakat lila. The apricot lila, the situation is already there, if you will. So if we were to enter the apricot lila, nobody is being born there. So if you are not born there, there wouldn't be this acquaintance with all these details that actually manifest when you are actually born in the prakat lila. As Krishna is born in the prakat lila, and the prakat lila has this chronology proper of this world of human-like, again, pastimes, that will happen for someone being born there. And so a famous example in this regard of what may happen if you do not know the specific of these details, who are you, which is your village, your mother, and so on. A famous example of this is narrated in the Puranas in connection to Mahadev, to Shiva. So let's briefly share this well-known story, actually, connected to Mahadeva's Gopishwar, Gopishwar Mahadev. So once upon a time, Mahadev was nurturing a very intense desire, hankering to witness the Rasa Lila Mahotsav, this great festivity celebration of Ras. So he reached Vrindavan. When he reached Vrindavan, the gopis were there, and they stopped him on the border of Braj. And they told him that no one can enter such an intimate lila like the Rasa Lila without admission, without the blessings, without the permission of Jogamaya, Purnamasi. So Mahadev heard this from the gopis. You can imagine they are quite bold, and they are stopping Shiva from entering there by saying, you cannot enter here, this is too much for you now. You need to obtain certain blessings. That's the agency, Jogamaya department. So after hearing this from the gopis, it is told that Mahadev then worshipped Purnamasi with severe tapasya, with the idea of giving pleasure to her. And Jogamaya, Purnamasi, eventually was satisfied, pleased with Mahadev's offering, and appeared before him. Classical scenario in Hindu dynamics. Someone performing certain tapasya to please a particular agency of divinity, and that divinity appears in, I'm pleased with you, what do you want from me? What's the boon, the blessing you want? So Mahadev, Sri Shiva expressed, I would like to witness Rasa Lila. So in this way, Purnamasi said, Tatastu, let be so. So she took his hand, and Jogamaya then dipped Shiva in the Brahmakunda, in Vrindavan, Brahmakunda. And it is said that when Mahadev entered the Brahmakunda with the blessings of Jogamaya, eventually when he went out of the water, immediately he realized he assumed the form of a gopi, very extremely beautiful gopi. So Purnamasi, in the way she instructed this new gopi, adolescent gopi, to watch the Rasa Lila from one kunja, one group situated in the northeast corner of the Rasa Mandal, the Rasa arena. So in this way, the Rasa dance began that night, specific night, and there was this new gopi that, as you can realize, Shiva was not born from the womb of the gopi and so on. He underwent a particular transformation in his particular case. But she was there as a gopi. So the Rasa dance began, and this new gopi was watching the whole celebration from that appointed section. But interestingly to say that, however, Krishna and the gopis who were taking part of the Rasa Lila, they were not experiencing their usual relishment, their special delight in that particular night. So they were wondering why this is so, why we are not feeling so much ecstasy as usual. So they were starting to suspect, and this is a classical situation also, some unqualified person somehow or other entered the area, the arena. The lack of adhikar is ruining the party, in other words. And that's why Bhaktivinoda says, "Sesya adhikari janista saguna parikirtita." He paraphrases this section of the Bhagavatam by properly establishing your own adhikar. That's real beauty. No, that will imply acting according to your own adhikar and not trying to force yourself into some place that you are not up to in regarding adhikar. Now, this is similar to when Mahaprabhu was in Sri Vasangam, engaged in Rasa Kirtan, which is the parallel version in Gaur Lila of the Rasa Lila. And he was engaged with his devotees, but here he said the same thing. I'm not feeling the usual type of joy today. What's going on? There are different Leelas instances where Mahaprabhu said the same, but one is connected to with Srivasa's mother-in-law, who was there hiding and trying to witness the Rasa Kirtan of Mahaprabhu without having gone through the proper agency for entering there. So eventually Mahaprabhu was asking, I'm not feeling a special joy here. Something's going on. Maybe someone unqualified is looking like this. So eventually Srivas realized that, and he took mother-in-law outside, like trying to teach this principle. Fools rush where angels fear to tread, Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say. Now, try to establish your own adhikar and try to access the realm according to that. And in case you are hankering a higher realm, so you have to upgrade your adhikar. You have to do the needful for that. So, well, going back to the story, Krishna the Gopi said, so someone who has no adhikar may have been present here now. So they started to search in all directions, and they saw this Gopi, he hiding there in that particular group and looking the whole lila. So they started to suspect this new Gopi because she was new for them. They found her hiding there, so it was a really weird situation. So the Gopis started to ask to do research, interrogate. So we are seeing you here for the first time. So who are you? And whose daughter are you? Who is your mother? And who is your husband's name? And from which village are you coming? But again, this new Gopi, who was Mahadeva's Gopi, she was unable to answer those questions because she was not born from a Gopi's womb, and she didn't underwent all these cultural, if you will, samskaras of being born in Braj and being acquainted with those specifics. So this new Gopi was just like staring at them without saying anything to the Braja Gopi, because we're certain that this is why the rasa was not giving so much rasa, so much delight. So she's the unqualified outsider. So somehow there's many instances after this lila, and eventually afterward on another occasion, Krishna and the gopis will allow this gopi to witness the rasa dance from a distance upon the request of Purnamasi, and eventually, as you may know, the story ends by saying that Shiva, who was as a gopi, he didn't have left his guru, who is Sankarshan, in the form of a snake on his neck. So in the midst of the rasa lila with such an ornament, it was particular. So he was appointed to be at the entrance, at the gate of the rasa lila, as the gatekeeper. And that's why for whoever one would like to enter into Vrindavan, there is this famous mantra, praying to Mahadev for entrance into Vrindavan. Vrindavana Vanipati Jaya Soma Sumamoli Sanaka Sanatana Sanandan Naradidya Gopishwar Braja Vilasi Jugangri Padme Prem Prayachani Rupadi Namo Namaste. So asking him for one being obtaining the proper adhikar, for becoming a nirupadi, free from material designation, attaining prem. So we are to pray to him. So, but this particular lila tries to make this point that Vishwanath is making in this first section. If you are not acquainted with these specifics that only come by being born on Prakat Lila, so he's using common sense and logic as well as quoting Revelation. You won't be able to answer these questions, and you won't be able to develop everything. That's not happening in the aprakat. That's the main point. So the conclusion will be, of course, that in the same way that Mahadev did not take birth from the womb of a gopi in the Prakat Lila, and he was unable to perfect his mood as an adolescent cowboy girl. Therefore, in the same way, it is mandatory, I think you say in English, like imperative, to take birth as a Again, all this in the context of Kamanuga Bhakti. It's imperative to take birth as a cowherd girlfriend, cowherd maiden from the womb of one of the gopis of Braj, marry eventually a cowherd boy in order to perfect one's identity in the context of Kamanuga Bhakti again. And all this will take place through the assistance of Yogamaya. And after this, upon completing perfection, attaining complete perfection through the association of these Nitya Siddhas, gopis, gopas, whatever the case, one will be able to render service to Sri Radha Krishna in the Aprakat Vrindavan and manifest Braj. Again, so the main point here is nobody's being born in the Aprakat Lila, but one will be already there. So the birth Lila, the Janma Lila, be that for Krishna, for whoever, all of us, all of the members of the Braj, this will take place in the Prakat Lila. So that's a different vantage point that Vishwanath is taking in order to further pound his post of why this is necessary. In this connection, there is the famous verse, Narottam Das Thakur also, he prayed in one of his songs in this way. He's praying like, when will I be born as a daughter in the house of Ahiri Gopa in Brishabhanupur in Barsana? When will I be married in Jabat? And when will I live there? In other words, he's saying, when will enter the Prakat Lila? So I can go through all these experiences, thus become acquainted with these human-like specifics and details of this Nara Lila that will facilitate my further culture of the Prem and eventually give entrance into the Aprakat. Also, Vishwanath further contributes to this idea in his commentary to the two verses of Ujjwal Nilamani that he quoted before in this same verse. And there he mentions that the pastimes of Krishna, and he adds a further example here, the pastimes of Krishna in human form, human Nara Lila, with the gopis born from humans are famous. So he emphasizes with this Prakat Lila, born of. Without being born as a human on earth, he's mentioning here, there can be no perfection. Though Lakshmi accepted the exalted position of the gopis, or he tried to, we could say, because she did, Vishwanath say, because she did not have the permission of the gopis to be born in a gopi womb, Krishna's pastime with her could not take place. So you know this famous story as well. Lakshmi wanted to participate in Rasa Lila, similar to Gopishwar Mahadev, but also of course different. And she tried to execute deep tapasyas, intense tapasya in Belbang, one of the 12 forests of Raj. So eventually, as you know, Guru Maharaj very nicely quotes, Krishna saw her there performing deep tapasya. She's Mahalakshmi, no? She's the goddess of majesty and opulence, but she was wearing a rotten white sari and seated eating fruits and roots under the tree. So she said, what are you doing like this, Lakshmi? She said, I want to enter into the Braj Lila. I want to enter into the Rasa Lila specifically. As Guru Maharaj will say, that's not the method. That's not the means to enter that. You have to thread the Raga mark, basically, he said. But specifically, according to her goal, he said, first you have to leave your husband, Lakshmipati, Narayan, you have to leave him. Then you have to be married, again, with a Gopa in Vrindavan. And then you have to leave that Gopa, that husband, and join me. And of course, this was too much for the Abhiman, the sense of identity of Lakshmi. She has her own spiritual ego. That's perfect. I mean, it's perfect that if you have a spiritual sense of identity, you don't want to leave that. No? The problem is when you have a material sense of identity, material ego, and you don't want to leave that in order to attain a spiritual one. So interestingly, here in this context, Vishwanath comments in Ujjwal Nilamani this same pastime in connection to what he's making, the point he's making here. Lakshmi wanted to be a gopi and enter Rasa Lila, but she didn't go through the requisites. She didn't projected herself to be born in the Prakat Lila, being born from the womb of a gopi, but as Lakshmi herself, she wanted to enter there without going through the Prakat Lila, which was the result. She was not able to enter there. So from one side of the other, he's trying to make clear about the necessity of further developing the remaining stages of Prem in the association of Nitya Siddhas on earth in the Prakat Lila. And then, continuing with our explanation of this first section, Vishwanath contemplates a further counter-argument to his reply. So, as we always say, he's very much open to address controversy in the context of making his point. So that's a very courageous and very lots of integrity is there, because it's not that he's just presenting his point in the dogmatic way and nobody can ask any question and you have to accept that. He's not even waiting for people to present argument, but he himself is doing that. And that's the classical method in Jiva Goswami and many of our acharyas. They present the point, they themselves present the argument, they themselves counteract that, they present a further counter-argument, and in this way they try to solve every possible doubt so the point is crystal clear. So which is the further counter-argument? Well, someone may say, what is the harm? Vishwanath mentions some imaginary Purva Pakshan. What is the harm in taking birth from the womb of a gopi in the unmanifest pastimes? The implication of this question will be, all the pastimes in the Aprakat Lila are, after all, just the same as the pastimes in the Prakat Lila. Remember, Jiva Goswami mentioned that in the Gopal Shampoo, which deals a lot with these dynamics of these two realms, Gopal Shampoo, Prakat Lila, Aprakat. There's a narration in the Aprakat about the Prakat. So Jiva Goswami said the pastimes in both of the two Lilas are the same. So someone may ask in that context, what's the harm in going directly to the unmanifest and not to the manifest? If between Aprakat and Prakat we're speaking about the same thing. So in reply to this, Vishwanath says here again, this is not possible. Because sadhakas, and he makes another point here, sadhakas or materially conditioned souls, different cases, cannot enter the Aprakat Braja Lila. This land, the Aprakat, is called Siddha Bhumi, which is an abode reserved for fully perfected beings, beings that have achieved the ultimate reach of their development of their specific type of prema according to their affinity. So in other words, what Vishwanath is mentioning here is only siddhas can enter there. Only those who have attained the ultimate development of their prem. And not the sadhakas or even those who are still developing their prem to its remaining stages of refinement. That sometimes here, Vishwanath will call them sadhakas as well. No? So we shouldn't be confused by this expression. Sometimes sadhakas will refer to those who are in the stages of sadhana between shraddha and asakti. The ones in bhava will be called bhavukas, the ones in prem will be called premikas. And from bhava on, generally they will be called siddhas as well. But also in this particular context, sadhakas will refer even to those who have attained prem, but who have not yet further refined their prem to the ultimate possible level of distilled expression, if you will. And the siddhas will be only those who have done so, who have entered the Aprakat. So the conclusion of this first section, before going to the next one, is that since there is no place for sadhana in the Aprakat Vrindavan, for sadhana I mean for certain practice for further developing of something that needs to be developed in order for so on. Since there is no place for this in this type of sadhana in Aprakat Vrindavan, it cannot be possible that a devotee directly goes there without first entering the Prakat Lila. Or in other words, in the Aprakat Lila, which Vishwanath here defines as Siddha Bhumi, land of perfected beings, siddhas, in this Aprakat Lila, there is no opportunity for being trained under the guidance of the Nitya Siddha Parishats, the eternal associates. That will happen only after taking birth in the womb of a gopi in Prakat Lila, in Prakat Vrindavan, receiving the training there. And after receiving the training there, one can then go to the Aprakat Vrindavan. So that's how that's happened. One enters the Prakat Lila in Vrindavan, and when that Prakat Lila is completed, as you know, then Krishna, his associates in the Prakat Lila are transferred to the Aprakat Lila. So in that moment, those devotees who enter the Prakat Lila for further and refine their prema and have done so, they will join them to serve there forever in the apricot lila. But again, they are not being born in the apricot there. They just are transferred there and are there. They have not to go through a birth in the apricot. Nitya sthiti, sometimes this is called, like permanent situation. There's not like chronological unfolding of the lila as it happens in the earthly Vrindavan, in the Prakat lila. So let's go to one more section. That will be the last section of today, not the last section of the whole verse. That will be finished in next class. So in the next section, which will be the last from today, Vishwanath continues to unfold this point presented in the previous section that today we saw. And he will further establish the subtle difference between the Prakat and the Aprakat Vrindavan in terms of sadhana and siddhi, or practice and perfection. So I will share this last section with you. It's there in the chat, so I will read it. It says like this. Vishwanath continues saying, it is not possible to attain the elevated moods of sneha and so on through the performance of sadhana. Therefore, before directly associating with Sri Krishna, Yogamaya takes the devotee who has attained prem to a manifest Vrindavan that is perceivable in the material universe. One takes birth there at the time of Sri Krishna's appearance so that these modes, sneha and so on, can be perfected before they attained Sri Krishna's bodily association. Because practicing devotees, fruitive workers, and perfected devotees can all be seen to enter into the materially manifest Sri Vrindavan, it is said to be both Sadhaka Bhumi and Siddha Bhumi, a land of sadhana or practice and a land of siddha or perfection. So again, Vishwanath begins this section by establishing, further pounding the post of this main point and establishing another interesting and important further point in this connection, another angle for addressing this idea, which is that the required developments of prem cannot be obtained by merely, if you will, engaging in sadhana, merely, quote unquote, as we conceive that here, engaging in sadhana in such a way to obtain something. Of course, sadhana is important. No, we are not trying to dismiss that. But in our particular situation here now, we should cultivate through sadhana. We should enter eventual union through a form, to the type of separation we can culture here. We know that union is entered by going through the separation that corresponds to our present situation as sadhakas. This is very much exemplified in the Gaur Lila. Also, in Gaur Lila we find a great emphasis on separation, especially when Mahaprabhu goes to Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri is known as Vipralamba Kshetra, which means like the field for culturing separation, especially in his last 12 years. He's exclusively dedicated to taste this divine love in separation. Of course, his example is not to be followed by us in every single sense, because his Krishna wanted to taste Radha Bhav, and it's not a sadhaka and so on, but on certain levels, as in his Acharya Lila, he's exhibiting him or his associates, especially going to the Goswamis, although they are siddhas and they are eternal associates of Bhagavan Sriman Mahaprabhu, they act as sadhakas in the sense of, it seems at certain moments how they pray, how they express themselves, what they go through. They are going through the stages of a sadhaka. And of course, they are showing how to deal with that in the most perfect way. And especially they are showing this degree of vipralamba, or separation, let's say, because vipralamba is exclusively related to Kamanuga Bhakti. So they are showing this separation to an utmost degree at the end of their lives. No? So showing through this Gaur Lila how to enter into the Krishna Lila. So that's important for us as sadhakas. But again, in order to attain a further development of prem, that is the main point that Vishwanath here, let's say you did your homework as a sadhaka, as a participant of the Sankirtan Lila of Mahaprabhu here, and you attain certain affinity, you attain prem in connection to the Braj. But in order to attain a further development of that, Vishwanath says, no sadhana here is enough, basically. We actually need, his point is, to be situated in a very particular, powerful environment, surrounded by Nitya Siddhas from day one, again, receiving the rasa samskar from the womb, something very powerful, and only then nourishing our already developed prem into newer, higher stages. So that's something very specific. So therefore, his conclusion will be like stages like sneha, man, and so on. Further development of prem cannot be practiced outside of the prakat lila. And they need to be in place before entering the aprakat lila. You follow? We cannot practice that. We can culture that in sadhana here, but we cannot either try to enter the aprakat without having already developed them, because they need to be in place before entering the aprakat. So the only option in between our present situation and the aprakat lila is being born in the prakat lila. So in other words, we have to be born in Vrindavan, in this planet Earth, and we could say in this sense, no, like a little bit of hasya here, but those who say that there are some people, even some devotees, no, generally Indian, who will say that we have to be born in India first before attaining the ultimate goal, before attaining salvation. We require the qualification of being Indians. And in one sense, they are right, because we have to be born in the Prakat Lila in Vrindavan, which is in India, no, in the Prakat Lila. So somehow or other, they are right. Not for sure from the place that they are saying that. That's not their intention for sure. But we could harmonize their statement in this way. Yeah, we have to be born as Indians. We have to be born in Prakat Lila and Vrindavan before attaining the ultimate perfection. So that is why Yogamaya, Vishwanath mentions here this. That is why Yogamaya is eventually will eventually place this mature sadhaka, this premika, in other words, in the womb of a gopi in Krishna's Prakat Lila and Braj. After that, the devotee has attained prem, and before he or she will attain Krishna's direct association, so they can develop in this Prakat Lila and completely perfect their prem in stages like sneha, man, and so on. I think someone turned on the microphone. Okay, I silenced them, no problem. No, this is Guru Maharaj gave always this nice contemporary example of the football team. Maybe you already know it, but I will mention them. He says that maybe you are a football player in your university, and you are very good there. Actually, you may be even the best. So you are promoted to play in the, I don't know how do you say in English, like the main leagues, the main league, the great professional team. No? So the point is that when you are in college, you are the best there. So you're accustomed to being the best and to play with some others who are not so good as you. But now you are entering into a whole realm where everyone is the best. So you have to. So in such an environment, you were the best in college, but now in their association, you are no longer the best. But in such an association, you will become also one of the best as them by their powerful association. But in the beginning, you will not enter to play the game, but you will be sitting on the bench and witnessing how these professional players are being the best on stage, if you will. And by just looking at them, witnessing that, further imbibing, receiving football professional samskars, if you will, eventually you will start to play and you will become a professional yourself. You will be part of the main team. So he made this interesting analogy, which is really accurate. In the same way, someone who has prem in this world will be professional, will be the best in comparison to other sadhakas who have no developed such a stage. But when that person is born in the Prakat Lila, will realize, oh my God, all of them here are premikas and more. They are eternal associates of Bhagavan. So you will start receiving their association, looking at them from the bench, if you will, but gradually becoming part of the whole dynamics of the lila, and by the power of by the mercy, basically, we will say, by the merciful samskars they are giving to us, someday eventually we'll be able to enter the apricot. So Vishwanath, in this way, let's go to the conclusion. He will conclude this section of this seventh birth or prose by mentioning that since we can see sadhakas, siddhas, and even ordinary people, we can see that all of them can enter into this visible manifestation of Vrindavan on earth, this Prakat Lila. Therefore, this place is both Sadhaka Bhumi and Siddha Bhumi. In other words, what's the point here? Before, in the previous section, if you may recall, he named the Aprakat Lila as Siddha Bhumi. Aprakat, only a land for perfected beings. No one else can enter there. Not even sadhakas, not even premikas without further development. Aprakat is Siddha Bhumi. But now he's calling the Prakat Lila Siddha Bhumi and Sadhaka Bhumi as well. So he's extending the Siddha Bhumi definition to the Prakat Lila. Why? Because the Nitya Siddhas are participating in it. You follow? The Aprakat Lila, only Nitya Siddhas are there, and that's why Siddha Bhumi, land of perfected beings. By the Prakat Lila, Nitya Siddhas are also there, so that's why also Prakat Lilas can be called Siddha Bhumi in that sense. But in connection to the rest of the ones who are participating in the Prakat Lila, who are not Nitya Siddhas, sadhakas, or even ordinary people who may happen to be there, Jadrichaya, by chance, if you will. In those cases, this Bhoma Vrindavan is mainly known as Sadhaka Bhumi, not Siddha Bhumi, because sadhakas, or what to speak, karmis or whatever, they are not siddhas. So in that case, the Prakat Lila will be termed Sadhaka Bhumi, but because of the presence of the Nitya Siddha Prakars, it will be called as Siddha Bhumi as well. So before finishing our class, let's share some extra words, since we have been speaking a little bit about here, Prakat Lila, Aprakat Lila, and some further differences between the two. So sometimes also Vrindavan is, when we already spoke about this, no? The presence of Aishwarya and Madhurya, how the two of them coexist, Vrindavan. But also sometimes we hear that the Aprakat Lila is connected with a particular expression of Aishwarya that is not present in the Prakat Lila, in the earthly Lila. And that's why sometimes the Prakat Lila is termed Nara Lila, and the Aprakat Lila sometimes is called Deva Lila. So Nara Lila, Deva Lila will mean human pastime and divine pastime, implying there is some more overt expression of Aishwarya in that Golok Vrindavan. Of course, on some form, on some degree, we are not speaking about Vaikuntha-like Aishwarya. No? There are certain extra Aishwarya there in the Golok, but not to the point like Vasudeva was affected by Aishwarya, Arjuna, as we already explained. Sometimes Guru Maharaj will say, in Golok Vrindavan, the Kanamba trees will be larger, a little bit bigger than on earth. No? It will be more divine-like than human-like. But also some other difference, and that's why we say sometimes there is a little bit more of Aishwarya in Golok Vrindavan than in the Gokul, on the earthly Prakat Lila, is that the ones in Golok Vrindavan, the Brajavas in Golok Vrindavan, they know they are liberated. Jiva Goswami mentions in the Krishna Sandarbha, for example, he mentioned that the devotees in the Prakat Lila are not aware, the Nitya Siddhas, now I'm referring here, not the one born in the Prakat Lila, but the Nitya Siddhas who are born in the Prakat Lila, they do not know that they are already, they are simultaneously in the Aprakat Lila at that same moment. But actually they behave like they are aspiring to attain that, to attain the Aprakat. But, and that's why when Krishna is showing the Brajavasis in the Bhagavatam, you know this section, when Krishna is showing the Brajavasis Golok, he's not showing them there. No? So not to disturb their sensibilities in the Prakat Lila. Only Krishna is being seen in that realm, but actually they are there in the Aprakat as well. But in the mood of the Prakat Lila is, we don't know we are there. We want to be there. But it is said that on the other side, in the Aprakat Lila, the Brajavasis, Nitya Parikars, on some level, they remember that they were present in the Prakat Lila. That's the point. That's the difference. That's the Aishwarya, if you will, the extra Aishwarya there. And they remembered that. In that sense, there is some Aishwarya, some knowledge of the situation. No? The famous example of this is the Gopal Champu, where the Brajavasis are in Golok, Vrindavan, in the Aprakat Lila, but they are hearing Vermadu Kanta, Snikta Kanta about the Prakat Lila and remembering that, about what they've gone through when being on earth. So that's the subtle difference in dynamics. No? Also, we could say that the Prakat Lila, the earthly Vrindavan, possesses some elements of our own experience as sadhakas. As I mentioned, some chronological unfolding in time, but also the unfolding of the Lila on earth has a point when it reaches what we call Nitya Sthiti, which means it unfolds to the point of resembling exactly the dynamics of the eternal situation in Golok Vrindavan. And this is what I mentioned today before. When Krishna kills Aristasur, Radhakunda is manifest, the whole Lila has unfolded to the point of being parallel to what's going on in Golok Vrindavan. So Guru Maharaj sometimes says, stop there, stop the movie there. And the other things are part of the Krishna going out of Vrindavan, some other purposes. But till that point, the Lila has flourished, if you will, bloomed, just like it's going on in Vrindavan. Radhakunda is there, meeting at midday. Nitya Sthiti means this, like eternal and permanent situation. So here, in this Prakat Lila, time is playing a role, facilitating the sequence of events, and in connection with us as sadhakas, all of these events, each of them at the same time has no beginning or end, and thus serve as an appropriate object of meditation, because all these events that are unfolding are existing eternally in the Golok. So they are properly for meditating. We are not meditating in something temporary. And even it is said that Krishna's occasional leelas, called mythical leelas, that appear only in this world, is being born, killing certain demons, which doesn't happen generally in the uppercut. All those live eternally in the hearts of his devotees, who remember about that. As we say, in the Golok, they remember what's going on in the Gokul, in the Prakat, and also are appearing elsewhere in the world, in another universe that will be further mentioned by Vishwanath in the next section. How all these earthly leelas are always going on in some Vrindavan, in some planet Earth. So as soon as they complete themselves in this universe, they manifest in another universe. So in that sense, they are perpetual as well. And also due to certain leelas, like the birth of Krishna, the Madhurya intensifies. Madhurya, I mean here, intimacy. As Kavi Karnapur would say, the whole Prakat Lila is only made for the sake of Jashoda, to experience the joy of being a mother again. And in this way, sometimes it's mentioned that the Ananda of Gokul, of the Prakat Lila, is higher than the Ananda of Golok. In this context, Guru Maharaj will say this Prakat Lila has this extra feature, like a movie on location. But actually, as we mentioned, the ones in one Lila are aspiring to enter the other. The Nitya Siddhas who take part of the drama on earth, the Prakat Lila, are aspiring to enter the Aprakat Lila. And the ones in the Aprakat Lila, even though they are aware we were there, and they remember that they are wanting to go there as well, again, to taste the uniqueness of being on earth and all the specifics of this Prakat Lila. So these are some words to further pound Vishwanath's post on the necessity and glory of going through this Prakat Lila and the connection between that and the Aprakat Vrindavan. So today I will finish here, and of course in our next class we will continue and finish this 7th verse prose with some further elaboration that Vishwanath will present regarding this very same point of the necessity and importance of being born in the Prakat Braj. So I don't know if you have any points, any questions, something you may like to share before we finish today.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, just Kanuram here.
Yes, Kanuram, tell me.
I have a question for you, and you may have covered this. I'm forgetting that the time is now 11 o'clock, but my question is, So if a person were to attain the stage of bhava and actually like have an entrance into an internal life, a meditative life, and they start to view the spiritual realm from their meditative life, do they become privileged to see the prakat or the aprakat lila?
I mean, your question will be if someone in Bhava Bhakti has a vision of Krishna and his associates, let's say, and some lila, if you will, that does it correspond with the prakat lila or with the aprakat lila?
Yes.
That's mainly the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, we could say that, at least to my knowledge, there is no like further elaboration on that, some clarification if the visions correspond with one lila or the other, because again, most of the lilas that are going in the prakat or the aprakat are basically the same, in the sense of, even though there is some chronology and some stuff. And I will say that most of the darshan that the devotee will have, and this will, Vishwanath, I won't speak too much in detail about this because in the remaining section of the verse, he will speak about this. He will speak about how Bhagavan is revealing to the sadhaka who is leaving the world in Prem and giving a darshan of himself and his associates and giving a glimpse of his eternal service. So we could say, I wouldn't say that there is not too much of a difference between the two, but we will say that a devotee in Bhava, and what to speak in Prem, that person already has an established identity. And of course, again, there is necessity for further development, but still already at that time, as Guru Maharaj will say, in a Sakti, the material attachment has been removed, spiritual attachment is there, and as we have a sense of identity according to our material attachment, a spiritual sense of identity will arise according to spiritual attachment in Asakti. And in Bhava, there still will be some sadhana, but the sadhana will have to do to further culture that ecstatic identity. So Bhava has some elements of sadhana because still there is some culture, but in another type of sadhana, Bhava sadhana, but at the same time it has some elements of Prem because it's the first ray of the sun of Prem. So the point is at this stage, Bhava or Prem, which is the further condensation of Bhava, the devotees already had more than a glimpse of who he or she will be in eternity in connection with a particular realm of service that is very intensely hankered by that devotee. So I will say that whatever vision, spurti, revelation, epiphany the devotee may have in the course of attaining Prakat Lila will have to do with that, will correspond, as Vishwanath will make it clear in the next section of the verse, will correspond to one's own cherished mood, to one's desire of attaining a particular service. Now, on the stage of Bhava, all the things will be in place and intentionally cultivated in a particular ecstatic sadhana. A certain identity, let's say Manjari Bhav. In the stage of Bhava, already the devotee is culturing particular identity that she will have: name, age, color of cloth, group of service, specific service, village to one belong. All these ingredients and elements of one's eternal identity will be there. So her inner world will be revolving around this quote unquote information. It's not just theoretical information, of course, at this time. So I will say that all the revelation that will come, and Vishwanath will make that clear, will be as a further confirmation of whatever that sadhaka is hankering for. And the point is that those services will be attained on the Prakat Lila, because one will be born in the Prakat Lila and one will be furthering, culturing. Vishwanath will say in the next section, Krishna will give darshan to that devotee, even though that devotee has not yet reached the further developments of Prem that are required and has to be cultivated in the Prakat Lila. He will give a darshan of his eternal service. So in this sense, we could say mainly it's connected to the Aprakat Lila. Although in the Prakat Lila, a certain point of the Prakat Lila, on the unfolding of the Prakat Lila, that devotee will attain Radha and Krishna's personal service and association after these further developments, and that point will be playing itself out eternally in the Aprakat Lila. So Vishwanath will say in the next section this, he will say, even though the devotee has prem, but not the further developments of prem, Krishna will give him a darshan of himself, his associates, and his service in the context of his ultimate attainment, as to further give support and hope to the devotees. All auspiciousness is for you. It's just a matter of time. So we could say that that vision that the devotee is having has to do with what she will ultimately attain in the Aprakat, but also that may be connected to certain stage in the Prakat Lila when these further developments of Prem have taken place. Maybe not from day one, but eventually in the Prakat Lila, and that will be transferred to the Aprakat. So I hope that that answers your question. Any other question? Yes, was okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there is any other doubt, question, commentary you may like to share.
Haribo?
Yes. Who is
Okay. It's Archana. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were hearing the mic open, but no voice there. Yeah.
Yeah. I had myself muted on the phone on top of being muted on the system. Yes, I just had a question. Do all of the gopis simultaneously participate in the Prakat Leela and the Aprakat Leela? Is that always, does everyone come and participate, or is there some, yeah, I don't know if there's any place that talks about that. I mean, I've never read that, but if you know anything about that.
Well, basically, yeah, Vishwanath we will continue furthering this idea, developing next class as well, but in brief words, we could say that yes, all the associates from the Nitya Lila are coming into the Bhoma Lila. All the one from the Aprakat come to the Prakat. They don't want to lose, as I mentioned at the end. No, they want to go there. No? In the same way they want to go the Aprakat from here, they want to come here from the Aprakat. So to say that it's not just like some of them come and some others remain there. And as we will see, I mean, the two of them are in two places simultaneously. It's not like all of them come here and Golok Vrindavan becomes empty and there is some sign we will be back. We are now in Prakat Lila. We come later because the Prakat Lila is playing out at every moment. That's an interesting point. No? As we will mention, we mentioned today, we'll mention next class. No? And there's always, as Guru Maharaj will say, it is always 12 o'clock somewhere. So it is always all of the elements of the Prakat Lila are playing themselves, some in some planet Earth, on some Vrindavan. Some Vrindavan and some planet Earth somewhere. So the point is, for that to happen, all the associates are there with Krishna in the Prakat Lila, but all remain in the Aprakat. So there are two simultaneous manifestations, and of course, do not try to make that fit between your ears only through math and logic, because here we are dealing with supra transrational elements. But yes, the main point, and what it has been mainly stated and mentioned by the commentators, is that all of them are coming. It's not that just a few of them join Krishna, because there will be too much to fit into the earthly Vrindavan and all this. For that, we need to resort to another type of logic and common sense, if you will. Okay, so there's one question here in the chat. It's okay?
Thank you.
Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
One question from Anna Purna in the chat says, I've heard you say it, I imagine, that the two main moods in Vrindavan are Madhurya and Sakya. I didn't say that. By Yogamaya, which will be her mood? She has somehow feels all the moods to develop the Leelas. Well, first of all, I never say that the two main moods in Vrindavan are Madhurya and Sakya. I've mainly said the two main dispensations or opportunities, windows of opportunity, as Guru Maharaj will say in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, are Madhurya and Sakya, which is another thing. We are not saying which is the main mode in Vrindavan. It's in a subjective way, everyone will feel their own mode to be the main one, if you will. And all of them are important to create the whole, to orchestrate the whole dynamics of the Leela. Of course, one may say in some way there are the two main moods for some particular reason, especially Priyanarma Sakya, Manjariva, but I'm sure mainly you are trying to say that what I mentioned actually was, which is the main dispensation of the Sampradaya. So beyond that, the question is regarding Yogamaya, which is Yogamaya's mood. If she is having all develops of mood to develop the Leela. Well, if I don't know if when you say Yogamaya, you are speaking about Purnamasi, because also we are mentioning that. We say Yogamaya, but Yogamaya, as I explained, I think 2 or 3 classes before, will be still an abstract way of speaking about Shakti, Swarup Shakti, an expression of the Swarup Shaktis. We have Mahamaya, Vishwanath already explained about that, how Mahamaya or Maya Shakti creates a particular bonding. We have the transrational, transcendental expression of it, we may call Yogamaya, which creates another type of bewilderment, illusion, divine illusion, and bonding. And the personification or personified forms of Yogamaya generally are presented in the form of Purnamasi and Brinda Devi. Mainly Purnamasi is connected, but Brinda Devi is also connected to that. So in that sense, we may ask, well, in which relationship they are connected? Well, Brinda Devi is a gopi, so she's in Madhurya Bhav, basically. Of course, a particular type of gopi, particular type of Madhurya Bhav. She's a Dutika, she's a messenger, and she's orchestrating the whole Leelas. Now she's a very paradigmatic figure in that context. And Purnamasi, at the same time, of course, also she's a very unique personality who is mainly connected as the guru of the whole Braj. And Krishna himself, if we take Krishna as the Visaya Lambana, or the object of all rasa, as it is described by Srila Rupa Goswami, all rasas converge in Krishna as its object. So what is the connection between Purnamasi and Krishna? Or Krishna considers Purnamasi as his guru. So he behaves like this in the morning when Krishna is awakening, for example, in the Prata Lila, which is from 6 to 8:24 in the morning, to say that when Krishna is awakening, Yogamaya goes to Jashoda's home, wanting to see Krishna being awakening. And Krishna is awakening, and Jashoda enters with Purnamasi and Ambika and some other elder ladies from the village. And Krishna is starting to offer pranam to Purnamasi, in the context of elderly love. So in that context, we will say there is some Vatsalya, the type of Vatsalya, of course, not the same one, but in one way, there is some Vatsalya. Purnamasi is treating Krishna. But of course, Purnamasi is Purnamasi. Again, we are not speaking about, it's a very paradigmatical figure. That's my point. There are not many Purnamasis. As we may say, there are many Gopas, many Gopis, or like this. Now, Purnamasi is a very unique personality. Who has a very unique role. Again, she's the guru of the whole of Braj. So similarly, we could say, well, we have a relation with our guru, mainly in the context of there is certain dasya from our part to him, but from him to us, there will be a paternal relationship, like a father-mother figure, but also some friendships mix. So we could try to describe Purnamasi's stance, if you will, in that connection. But of course, that's not limiting her to perfectly orchestrate whatever needs to be done. And there are different expressions of the Swarup Shakti, strictly speaking, because Purnamasi is personification of Yogamaya. Yogamaya is another way of picking up Swarup Shakti, and we could say also Srimati Radharani is also personification of Swarup Shakti, and she's in Madhurya Bhav, and some other Nitya Siddhas in Sakya Bhav are personifications of another form of Swarup Shakti. So different ways to speak about that. It's not to be limited to one specific form. Okay, so some words about that. So I think we are ready. If there is no idea, any other question before we finish today. Okay, so thank you very much to all of you for your time, presence, and see you next Thursday, where we'll be seeing the third part of this 7th verse of the second illumination of Raga-vartma-candrika, finishing it. So thank you very much. Shila Gurudev ki jai, Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Raga-vartma-candrika ki jai, Shri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai, Shri Dwadasi ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Praman Haribo Pancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Haribo.